Hi everyone, my name is Gulnaz Aksenova and today I'm delighted to share my presentation on business model innovation awake firms in the AI era. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Abel for the kind invitation and to all of you for joining the session. Unfortunately, I could not attend in person due to bout of flu, but I'm very pleased to share my insights with you through this recording. So I would like to give you a very short intro into who I am. Currently, I work as an independent consultant and I look for my next challenge. I position myself as a strategic research and innovation leader with more than 12 years actually of international experience, spanning academia, engineering, consultancy across the UK, Europe, Canada, and the Middle East. I specialize in bridging the gap between science, research, and business, transforming complex R&D opportunities into strategic initiatives that deliver measurable impact. My profile is multidisciplinary, and I was fortunate to work across multiple fields and topics. My core expertise is R&D strategy and delivery, digital innovation and transformation, cross-functional leadership, policy evaluation, ecosystem building, education, and systems thinking. And I do like to think of myself as a systems thinker. I do practice it whenever I can. So I start my presentation with a very bold statement. Strategizing is essential for embracing computational design and innovation. The truth is, very often innovators jump into development without prior thinking, research, and analysis, and as a result, most innovations are not being adopted or implemented in practice. I've seen that in practice myself. Any organization that wants to adopt the technology would need to understand why we should invest into the technology at all in the first place. And for those reasons, the strategy becomes extremely important. So let's define what strategy is. After working in the industry, I understood that there are many definitions of strategy, and it's important to define what I mean by strategy. So when I repeat the word strategy throughout my presentation, you understand what I mean by that. Well, strategy is an integrated set of choices that determine how an organization positions itself in its environment, allocates resources, and creates and sustains competitive advantage over time. I did my PhD in strategy management in the management school, so I very much come with knowledge from the management literature. Scholars again and again, management scholars again and again state that organizations need an innovation strategy. There is a missing link between strategy and innovation, and it's getting harder to do R&D, and there is no good alternative to investment into R&D. And we do know that nowadays, with a turbulent economic environment, most companies are cutting their budgets. Well, it turns out also that innovation is very often misunderstood. And for example, the British Standards Institution recently published a new innovation requirements, and they dedicated the whole page to this misunderstanding. Well, they say that innovation is often seen as identical as technology when they are absolutely not, and I absolutely agree, and I've seen that in practice again. Innovation is a process of creating something new. And you can create something new using that technology. So they are not the same. But for some reasons, many organizations believe that if they invest into R&D around technology, it will immediately lead to certain business outcomes and creation. But in fact, we do know that there is a strong disconnect between the two. If you create a value, it does not often translates into value capture and the business creation. In fact, focus on technological R&D solely and implementation does not lead to business transformation within industry. Knowledge creation does not lead to business creation. And that is not just in the AI sector industry, it happens irrespective of the context. So many of you would agree, and from even my recent conversation with Abel, I mean, what happens in the conferences might be implemented in practice in 10 years, with 10 years delay, right, Abel? The question is, why does it take so long? Well, as at the piece, it's extremely hard to do so. It's extremely hard to link strategy with innovation, R&D, and value creation with value capture. And for those reasons, it takes so much time. So And as a result, 70% of digital transformation initiatives do not reach out their goals. And again, these statistics come from generalization and across all industry analysis. And interestingly, 900 billion of US dollars are wasted on an annual basis. And most companies believe in digital transformation, especially now in the AI era. They see it as a risk number one priority for the organizations, right? And yet, not many are able to connect innovation, strategy, and technology. So now, since as early as 2000, some leading organizations and champions came to a conclusion that business models are critical to digital transformation. And since then, we keep talking about business models, but still we yield almost no results. In fact, technology follows the business model, right? You first define the value and then create the business at plan, and then you develop a technology to sustain and create that business, right? So if there is a critical question. If business models are the engine of digital transformation, then why is there still no Uber of construction? And with before I jump further, I would like actually to define what business model is again. So a business model describes how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value within an economic, social, and technological context. When I refer to a business model, it means I refer to three categories of activities that are interconnected and they have to work together and be aligned in order for business model to realize. I would like you to pay attention to the value creation process because value creation process is built on new capabilities, new technologies, partnerships, and processes. Please make a note that technology is only one mechanism out of four. Value propositions appears to be really hard task for many because how do you define value if value is evolving, you constantly iteratively test. So and value capture, we don't have very good mechanisms for measuring value capture, which is really interesting, right? And in very much many cases, success of value capture is almost accidental. It's fascinating, or at least it looks like accidental. Either way, Rich and myself, when we were at Arup, he's still at Arup, he continues at research, but when we were at Arup, he approached me and we thought, okay, if business models are extremely important, why IAC organizations and particularly consultancies are struggling to move forward and to reinvent themselves in the AI era? And we wanted to explore that topic, and we wrote a paper on that topic as well, as which presents outcomes of our research. So the presentation I'm presenting you is partially based on that paper, which we're very proud of. Please do have a look at it if you will have time. So we observed in practice as well that the changes in technologies are exponential. I think we all noticed that it changes extremely fast, even for the most advanced technologically capable individuals. This change is happening a bit too fast than the processes are happening within an organization or even the industry, right? Level of expectations is also rising by the client, and it's almost like you have to act in that very turbulent era or environment where clients constantly change their demands and expectations, and they believe with AI you're now even probably faster and more efficient, which does not always happen like that, right? So the level of capability and improvement has slowed down, and it's been slowing down since the introduction of digital innovation in the AI sector, which was very interesting. So the question is, what's going on? Why the gap between those are increasing exponentially, and what could we do about it to help also your consultancies, right? Well, it turns out also that R&D in general across all sectors is getting harder to do. So this paper published by Anne-Marie Knott clearly says, well, apparently companies have lost their capabilities for doing R&D, right? And the spending on R&D has also declined by 65% over the past 3 decades. So it's not just the capabilities, it's that the companies spend less and less on R&D, right? And as a result, they've got worse at R&D, which is extremely interesting. And as R&D within industry gets harder to do, companies respond but create new industries with greater technological opportunities. And we've seen those successes of Amazon and Uber. They created their own market within the traditional market, which is stagnating largely. But that's a different topic. In a sector, we've seen that since the 80s and the 60s, we went through several cycles of technological evolution. But why the technological pattern almost repeats itself, right? We will repeat again in the AI era when AI has become a new electricity. Well, historically, we've seen that when new technology comes in offered to a industry or sector, we see some pockets of excellence, just like yourself. Digital innovation adopted under the traditional practices very often because, again, changing the process on the system is almost like an impossible task. And there is increasing need to break the silence and to talk more about the integration. We also have discussions about business models, but there is a little progress. And it seems like we can focus on technology because it's so much easier. But when it comes to in industry and how we adopt technologies, we mostly adopt it for operational effectiveness or productivity. And we talk about the productivity. And indeed, the productivity of our industry is not very great. We all know that, right? But literature shows and analysis and research show that operational effectiveness, a focus on productivity improvement does not lead to increase of revenues. And for some reasons, many organizations believe that if they become, if they fully automate their horse almost, right, they will get an increase of revenues, but it doesn't happen that way because operational effectiveness does not create differentiation on the market, and therefore it does not help you to increase your revenues. It's not a business model. Automation basically means you make your horse running faster. So there are 3 stages towards digital transformation, right? We go through automation, which increases productivity, improves operational thinking. When we move into informational, right, we started to think about digital twins, connecting different entities and utilizing data multiple. But true transformational change tend to be a long-lasting competitive advantage. Can you think of your innovation that you present? Where would it fall? Would it fall into automation, information, or transformation? Well, a majority of innovations we have in the industry fall under operational productivity. And again, productivity is not great. We do need to improve it, right? We still need to have a healthy horse that runs fast so we could reinvest into R&D in the long term. So there are also different types of innovations. And I'm not just saying that we constantly need to look for breakthrough innovations to push the boundaries. But the quick question here, right? Again, going back to the business model and value proposition, what value do we want to create? Do we want to improve existing process or break the boundaries? And that would also, the answer to those questions would determine what innovation strategy you have and how you're going to move forward. And I keep presenting that slide everywhere I go to, disproportional emphasis on technologies and individuals, which I see again and again in industry, does not often lead to an innovation, right? We do need to break the boundaries. We do need to start integrating things and start to think differently. And here the business models become extremely important. So now when we talk about innovation, so what does matter in innovation? Well, it appears on Marie Knott published another interesting paper, right, on investment into R&D. And she says that there are 2 vehicles for innovation that are critical to organizational success. First is investment, which we already know about. The second is ability to convert newly discovered knowledge into value that matter to the client, right? What truly matters is how, for example, WSP uses resources where I've just recently worked, talent, decision-making, money, processes to create new services and products that are valued by our clients, right? It's a combination of multiple factors that work as a system, basically a business model. right? But an ability to convert knowledge into a value and creation of a business model, we need to focus on capabilities. So in our research with Rich, we came to a conclusion that capabilities are critical if we want to create business models. So as it appears that there are different types of capabilities organizations might have. There is ordinary, there is a dynamic capabilities, and they are absolutely not the same. Most organizations develop further their ordinary capabilities just to sustain their organizational productivity. But when it comes to dynamic capabilities, apparently, again, it's really hard to do, right? You need to sense new opportunities, size, and reconfigure. I mean, you need to create signature processes, which are very difficult and complicated to copy. And it appears that if you create a technological innovation, it actually can be very easy to copy on the long term. But doing multiple things together very well and appears to be really hard to copy. And that is often is a competitive advantage, right? And your capabilities and processes should not be imitable. It should be inimitable, right? And that is critical to business model innovation. Another type of capability is coordination flexibility capability, which not many organizations have, because again, the larger the organization, it's really hard to size and reconfigure themselves simply because of their size and their large. But what happens in large matrix organizations that exist in the AX sector is that we've got brilliant managers and champions like yourself that driven to push the boundaries. You sense and size new opportunities, but it's very hard to bring it back to the organization, right? For that, organization need to have the coordination flexibility capability to be able to capture that knowledge and sustain and support and enable those managers to create something. So the recent paper by Hogdon and his co-authors, they actually published in 2025, lucky us, they say that this capability is extremely important for emergence of business model innovation. And we've seen that with the results of our research, that most companies and matrix organizations are not very good at this coordination capability. And perhaps if we are able to create this environment, we can support an emergence of business models innovations in the future. So now, in our paper with Rach, we also came to a conclusion and we offered few strategic recommendations for companies. So on how to develop sensing, sizing, and reconfiguring capabilities. Apologies for a mistake here. So now with sensing capabilities, obviously we need to prioritize value-based business opportunities over time-based. And especially in turbulent times, we tend to focus on the short-term thinking because it's really hard to think long-term. But research shows that thinking in long-term brings and yields results, although immediately it's not obvious and seen. Continue investing into R&D innovation. In terms of size and capabilities, it also appears to be really hard for many organizations. And most organizations are very inward looking. The bigger they are, the more they think that they can do everything they want to do. So ecosystem thinking, it's very different amongst those companies like Facebook and Google. They actually built the whole business models on ecosystem governance. Embrace collective learning and coordination. The CFC coordination capability is critical for sizing capabilities. And then reconfiguring capabilities, it's actually when you understood what needs to be changed and then you're implementing that change and you're sustaining that change. So during that phase, leadership becomes extremely important. Governance models become extremely important. The health organization and ecosystem is important. And we do know these days that a safe environment produces results, right? If you're feeling safe, you're more innovative, you're more inclined to take risks, and risks means leading to value capture. So rethink, redesign, and reconfigure underlying data infrastructure. How many organizations have actually were able to reconfigure themselves for the new data infrastructure to be ready for the AI era? I challenge and I wonder. So now, thank you very much for listening. And if you do have questions, please do connect with me via LinkedIn. I'm very happy to answer. And thank you very much, Abel, again for the invitation. It was a pleasure. Bye.